Coming back now to our top topic, Quo Vadis Georgia? Has the Georgian dream become a Georgian nightmare, having ignored the declared will of the majority of Georgians to progress towards Europe? Violent clashes took place last night and the opposition remains hopeful. But the question, is Georgia in a deadlock? Absolutely relevant. Joining me now to discuss Georgian fate is Alexandre Crevaux-Asatiani, Deputy Director for Foreign Affairs, United National Movement, an opposition Coalition for Change member as well. Good evening, sir. Happy to have you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for covering this.
Just a quick information. We are going to show pictures on live coming from Georgia, as it happens. But we, of course, trying to sketch a possible scenario for your country. Georgia goes through a coup d'etat. These are your words. So please give us an outline of the situation today and of the mood among the opposition leaders.
Okay, so yes, as we speak right now, the law enforcement, the special forces, which by the way are under US sanctions, have launched an assault on the main protest site. We're talking about gas being thrown at the protesters and water cannons being deployed. This is happening right now. I just came from the protest site. So what happened is that on October 26th, the opposition won the election, but the Central Election Commission published different results. This is something that it's a fact. It's a fact that's been recognized by the opposition, by the president of Georgia, by civil society, and by most of the international community. So the current regime, led by Russian oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili, has taken over the government illegally, unconstitutionally, and with the support of an armed police. Yesterday, the same illegal, unconstitutional government, and it's extremely important that because words do matter, we do not call this a government. It is a de facto government, or self-proclaimed government, but not a government. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, that self-proclaimed government declared an end to Georgia's European integration, a path that it took more than 20 years ago, a path that is supported by 80 to 90% of the Georgian population, and a path that for Georgia is a question of life or death, because without Europe, all we have is Russia and death and poverty and destruction. That is the side that this illegitimate government has taken. So obviously people weren't going to let that happen, and we're not going to let that happen. This is, in the words of a former foreign minister that I was speaking to right before doing this interview, this is the last episode of the series. This is do or die at this point for us.
All right, you speak of a self-proclaimed government. So speaking of it, I know that there's a constitutional lawsuit questioning the legitimacy of this election. So what can be the outcome of it? I mean, what can the Constitutional Court decide?
The Constitutional Court is already taken over by the self-proclaimed government. The judges have mostly disappeared. Actually, a couple hours ago, 15 staffers of the Constitutional Court, we're talking about clerks that staff the court, came out publicly and said that they did not recognize themselves the legitimacy of this government, and they oppose this self-proclaimed government. And the judges themselves have basically disappeared from the public eye, and it's likely that they're being pressured or bought or various ways to force them to rule against our constitutional lawsuit. Our hopes are not with that constitutional lawsuit at this point. Right. Our hope is with what's going on in the streets right now. That's our last hope, and also with the international community.
Exactly. The international community, well, the European Union's ambassador to Georgia, in his first comments from Brussels, deplored the decision taken by the government to halt the EU bid, and he said, his words, regrettable and heartbreaking. Indeed, it is heartbreaking when we listen to young girls in the streets, whose future is being decided somewhere. And do you think that this hope that you have, I mean, the hope on the side of the opposition, is legitimate? I mean, how can end this deadlock? You know, you yourself speak about a possibility of being pressured as well, or delegalized. So do you expect something more brutal to happen, or do you expect some sort of, I don't know, negotiations with the government after all?
Negotiations with an illegitimate regime after they engaged in a coup would not really work. If any negotiation were to happen, it would be about which plane ticket we would buy Bidzina Ivanishvili on his way back to Moscow. Let's be clear that when I say that part of our hopes is with the international community, it's also a call to action. The international community, especially Europe, has a responsibility right now towards the Georgian freedom movement. And the reason why, and I say this with all the love that I can have for any institution in the world, but the European Union has its share of blame in this. Because for years, the opposition, the pro-European opposition, to which I belong, had been telling the Europeans that this government, led by Bidzina Ivanishvili, was up to no good. And they should never be believed when it claims to be pro-European, and one day it will backstab you. We were saying that for 12 years. We said it when it started arresting political opponents years ago. We said it when it put my party's leader, former President Mikhail Saakashvili, in prison 3 years ago. He's still there. We said it when this government decided to break all diplomatic ties with Ukraine and refused to implement sanctions on Russia. We said it time and time and time again, and the response from so many bureaucrats in Brussels was laughter and was complete disregard for what we were saying. The result of that was that what the European Union should have done years ago, when those actions still mattered, such as sanctioning people, sanctioning Bidzina Ivanishvili, are being considered only now, when it's almost too late. Let's talk for 1 second about Bidzina Ivanishvili. We say all the time that he's a Russian oligarch, and he is. He's a terrible example of a Russian oligarch. But at the end of the day, he is a French citizen. And I am also a French citizen, and I'm ashamed of being a French citizen knowing this. I'm ashamed that my French government refuses to remove his citizenship, even though it has all the legal grounds to do it. Because we might say it's a Russian oligarch that is beating us, that is throwing rubber bullets at us, that is shooting at us in the streets, but at the end of the day, it is a French citizen doing that. Mm-hmm. And that should have happened years ago. Now the European Commission is considering doing things like removing Georgia's visa-free regime with Europe, which will be a direct punishment, not against Bidzina Ivanishvili, because he has a French passport, and he'll be able to travel to Paris whenever he wants, and he'll be able to travel to Warsaw, to Berlin, to anywhere he wants in Europe. But who will be punished? Everyone else in Georgia, except him. That is absolutely unacceptable, and I really hope that Europe really comes to its senses, that it's time to do everything that it refused to do over the last 12 years now.
All right, Alexandre Crevaux-Asatiani, thank you very much for being with us tonight. As we see, the protests are still massive in Tbilisi. We can watch them live right now. Thank you very much once again for being with us. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to TVP World as more news and more feature are coming up next. Thank you.